All right, let's talk about cults for just a little bit. I know some of you all are excited. I hope you're not planning on joining a cult. No, it is not true that I'm a cult leader, but then again, maybe. No, just kidding. But seriously, no. Uh, Cults. Now, we're going to talk about some fascinating, weird things, and people join some weird things. But on a serious side, and we're going to make a lot of jokes, you know me. But on a serious side, people join cults for reasons, and we'll get to that on another day. But a big part about it is the need to be needed, and people love a cause. And cults really got huge back in the 60s and 70s, and a lot of these groups we're going to see in 70s on creeping on up into the 80s because a lot of discord, a lot of disunity in the world politically and from religion to religion and this kind of thing. And people were wanting peace and calm and trying to get away. And the next thing you know, they're in some kind of strange group that we can't define, and it's what we'll label a cult. Now, not all things are cults, and your church, your family, your society, your mission group may have one or two of these signs. That doesn't mean they're a cult, but you start lumping them all together, and then that's a little something different because cults are going to run parallel to churches, uh, society, mission groups, humanitarian movements, people trying to take care of one another, but then you start lumping this together and it's a little bit different. So here's some signs of cults. First thing, they have some kind of teaching that sounds new and crazy and cool. Now, cults are on the rise again, if you didn't know. And of course, the pandemic's not going to help because people are going to be scared after all this. And people are going to be looking for a way out as to not repeat all the things that are going on right now. And so, if there's some new crazy teaching, another reason cults are on the rise again is because of things like YouTube, because people can post conspiracy theories and pretty much convince you all of anything. And mostly young people are going to be joining movements like this, and that has always been true because they don't trust the government, they don't trust the parents, they don't trust maybe their school, they don't trust this and that, and they go, y'all have destroyed the world, we're going to do it differently. And then you get this new crazy teaching going on. It sounds, they can convince you of all kinds of things with quote unquote evidence, but there's always some non-verifiable part of their teaching that just gets really sketch. And you're going, wait a second, this all sounds really good, but you're telling me that aliens are going to pick us up on Valentine's Day? What? And so there's always some part of the teaching that you just can't, that the leader, maybe he or she are the only ones that knows the answer to. And you're like, why are you the only ones that understand this? And so it's that kind of thing. Speaking of the leader, it's going to be a very charismatic leader. Somebody can convince you of anything. And this is, and again, people can be charismatic. You may say, I'm charismatic and I can convince you a lot of things, get you revved up, excuse me, emotionally, get you charged up. Your coach, politicians, speakers, your preacher, your minister, your pastor, they can be charismatic. That doesn't mean they're a cult leader. But if they start convincing you of things, again, that sound very sketch, that's something different. But they've already kind of drawn you in, and they call upon you, give you a job, elevate you in the ranks. You feel important, you feel needed, and that need to be needed, and then they can start convincing you of things that you can't get out. Another example of this, and I'm not telling you to go watch it, and I haven't watched all of it, but I watched a couple of episodes of the Tiger King, that whole Netflix phenomenon that's going on. Well, one of the girls that had been one of the workers at one of those compounds, I don't even know all the people, talked about how she escaped. She got out. And she starts describing it. And I'm like, oh, it's a cult. It's absolutely what it is. They had drawn these people in, changed their names. They basically were sex slaves, and it was for this crazy cause, and the government was after them. It was like conspiracy theory stuff, and it's cult. And so it's exactly what it is. So we'll refer to that quite a bit. Speaking of that, talking about that, all in giving. These people were living on compound in this show, and they weren't allowed to leave, and they really didn't have any money, and they were paid, but very little. The rest, they were making millions apparently off of these compounds and these petting zoo type things, and the people weren't making the money. It was all for this cause, that kind of thing. So it's one thing, your church, you give to your church, and you should, you're commanded to. It's another thing to give everything you own for what this leader tells you to do. So that's a little different. We're all in on Christ spiritually, but it's another thing to sell your house, your car, move to some compound. Where's all this money going? Is it buying weapons? Is it building houses for other people to join in? You go, yeah, you should take care of other people. Yes, but the leader has a mansion. What are we doing here? So they're going to be isolated. And you're going to see a lot of this again after the pandemic. Cults are going to move people out, say, hey, we're going to safe. We're not going to repeat this. And they're going to be isolated. Another reason they're isolated is they don't want people peeking over their shoulders going, you have kidnapped my son or daughter, or the government peeking over their shoulder going, you are doing this child welfare laws, and you're like multiple marriages, you're practicing bizarre marriages and relationships, and then you're part of this, you're being isolated because you're breaking the law. And so that's a little different. Not always, but sometimes they're very apocalyptic, the end of the world. And you're going to see that. I've already heard a lot of that because of the pandemic. This is the sign of the end of the world and these things. And this is kind of where it kind of crosses the line into religious and back, end of the times. And we need to be prepared. And now they may be, one, we'll get to types of cults. These paramilitary, these people are buying generators and canned foods and living in a bunker waiting for the nuclear holocaust to happen. Okay, we're going to obliterate one another, and you see a lot of movies about that, apocalyptic movies, this kind of thing. But a lot of times cults are that way. This is the end of the world. A lot of them are going to predict the end of the world. This is when some of that new non-verified teaching comes into play. And then they're going to preach persecution. We're persecuted. Jesus was persecuted and he triumphed. The disciples are persecuted and he triumphed. And it may not even be religious. We're persecuted. The government's against us. Your church is against us. Your family's against us. Everybody's against us. We are the persecuted. That whole underdog feeling. And it's always better to play as an underdog. We've been wronged and we're going to triumph and we're going to overcome. And we're persecuted and we're oppressed. And you feel angry and emotional, and it's the government or this or that. And when people try to pull people out of cults, I go, don't listen to them. They're the enemy. They've turned wrong against you. And again, you get these people revved up emotionally, get them buying in completely to something, and then they're not going to listen to reason. And it's like a bad relationship. So again, those are just some signs. Again, your family may have some of these signs. That doesn't mean you're in a cult. Maybe your sports team, all in giving, and you feel persecuted because you don't win any games. That doesn't mean it's a cult. But you start lumping these things together. And again, the big question is, what's the end game? What is the end game? The end game is something that's you can't understand. You don't know where it is. You don't know what the point. That's the difference. As a Christian, the end game is to be with Christ, to be with God, and but you're drawing people in out of love, and you're not doing these other things. It's different, okay, than a cult, and the end game being something you can't understand at all. You have no, again, aliens are going to pick us up in a Volkswagen. Or we all have to commit suicide. Then we got issues. So those are signs of cults.